Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Omniverse of Nick, and part 13 to the Mcqueen Walking Dead story. I am your host, Nick, and like always, before we get into today's episode, just want to be sure to tell you guys to smash the like button, subscribe to the Omniverse of Nick channel, and comment your favorite part or parts of ongoing stories or past stories, as well as future recommendations for what-if suggestions and general discussion that you might happen to see in the future. With all that said and out of the way, let's get into today's part, which is going to be focusing squarely on both the farm and Woodbury, with a very interesting development. But first, before we do any of that, let's touch with Shane and Michonne. Got you going there. We're going to be touching upon Shane and Michonne and how far along they've been on the road. With all of Morgan's weapons, they've been on the road for some time. Any walkers or people, they have had no problem taking down. Soon enough, they get involved with more walkers, and they get into a fight, because this time, there's actually quite a decent amount of them, but they manage to take them down. But soon after, they both look up, exhausted on the ground, to see a man with a leather jacket and a barbed wire baseball bat strolling towards them, smirking, with seemingly a malicious intent. And Shane, he raises his gun instantly and tells the man he better not come a step closer. He's outnumbered and outgunned, because obviously, with how much they would have stolen from Morgan's place. But the man introduces himself as Negan, and he just smirks. And, with a snap of his fingers, 30 men pop from behind him. And yeah, now they're the ones outnumbered and most certainly outgunned. Negan just looks down at them and says, "You were saying? You got quite the amount of guns there, and a huge, huge ego." Shane, proving Negan's point further, raises his gun, still sensing that they might be able to win with the amount of weapons they have, but Michonne looks at him in a way that says, "We can't win this, and it's best to just listen and not get ourselves killed. Plus, we're exhausted." It's pretty much all of that exudes from the one look. From Michonne and Shane being on the road for some time, they would have actually gotten a bond. Not a love bond, but a bond. Shane, he says that he will listen and comply to Negan on one or two conditions. Number one, they get to keep at least half of the weapons that they scrounged up if they decide to join Negan's little parade here, and they get to climb up to whatever stature of power this guy Negan has in his whole group here. Negan says that they are in no position to be giving out orders or demands, especially since they're the ones outnumbered and outgunned. Specifically because Shane aimed the gun at him first. But since they're both willing to work with Negan, he will comply, but under his demands. They will keep a decent fraction, not half, but a decent fraction of their weapons, specifically their favorites, because he won't rob them of that, and they ain't gonna get to the higher powers of what Negan has in his whole savior thing, but they will get a boon to eventually become top soldiers, should they comply. Soon enough, Michonne gets herself befitted a decent stat in the savior department, and Shane climbs up rather quickly for his bravery, his ego, and his stature of being a past officer, which definitely appeals to Shane in a good way, because we wouldn't want to demean him in the Savior Army if he were to join it. So for now, Shane and Michonne are alive and having to get used to being part of a group that's Negan's. Meanwhile, at the very armored up farm, being very much in peace for the longest time of Herschel's farm, Everyone is living their best life, seemingly, with no sort of conflict, bar maybe occasional walkers to dispose of off the course of the yard. The Grimes family is prospering with Mcqueen, Judith, and Lori, and all of them living. Glenn and Maggie's, as well as Beth and Jimmy's, and Jackie's and T-Dog's relationships are all blooming. The Grimes family, all of it. They are all basically not only living their best life, but whatever ties they would have had with their relationships breaking in the past, especially in canon, would have been solved by now. Daryl and Merle are obviously by themselves still at this point, with no one really to go with. But Jim, I decided to throw in a little upgrade for Jim and Patricia's character, especially around this point. For the first time, I am putting Jim and Patricia in a relationship, because I think by this point, Patricia would have healed over Otis's death. So, it's only right that I should put some form of another relationship and plus for Jim and Patricia's character. Mcqueen, he now has been upgraded to the point where he could take on 10 Lightning McQueens. He has 2 missile launchers, his machine gun turrets, and even more speed and durability than any iteration of him, which is obvious. So, along with every single other person on the farm, especially Herschel and the Grimes family, Mcqueen living his best life. Sometime later, out of the corner of his eye during a patrol around the farm, Mcqueen spots something. No, he spots someone, 3 people, heading straight towards the farm in quite a bit of a hurry. 3 people, and a truck behind them, signifying there might be more people inside. The 3 see the car and introduce themselves as Abraham, Eugene, and Rosita. But then, Abraham gets a real good look at the car, and he smiles. He's not scared. He was surprised at first, but he's actually happy. He's actually not surprised at all. And he tells Mcqueen to his face, looks like we just found ourselves a really good ally. But how did this happen? How did Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene find the farm? What actually went down there? And no, this is not a comic twist. This is different. But how did it happen? Well, I'll explain. Back at Woodbury, the governor has taken control of the prison after the fight with Tomas and the prisoners and putting Alan back in the hold of Woodbury with Tyrese and Sasha. After that, pretty much everything is prospering for Woodbury just as much. Clara and Bob are eventually found at separate ends past the points of the town and brought in. So, yeah, doing a lot more with Clara, by the way. And Bob, obviously, I can't just let his character go. So, after all that, and Woodbury prospering just as much, soon enough, they hear a knock at the Woodbury gates. The gates are opened, and Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene all make their presences known and ask to speak with the leader of this town, because there has to be one. Abraham even knows that. The governor, Philip, whatever the frick you want to call him, at least in this sense, introduces himself and asks, how can he be of service? Abraham introduces himself as Abraham Ford and Rosita and Eugene and says, this town, you've got a lot of people here. And the governor here, he seems like he's led them well. Not only is there a lot of people, but they seem to, at least a few of them here, be quite proficient in combat from what he's seeing around the town, especially everything. And says that they could use that. And what he means by that is that they're on a mission with Eugene Porter, who knows how to fix this whole mess. And this town and the governor, they could definitely be of help. And he asks the governor if he and anyone in the town would like to join them in going to Washington and saving the world. After all that, the governor, he sits on this for just a second to process all this. And then, give or take about a minute, 2 minutes, thinking of all of this over, what Abraham just said, he looks at Abraham and says, no. Abraham, he needs a second to process this. Did he just hear no? And he's actually like scoffing a little bit at this, and it's like, could you repeat that? Because he actually didn't expect that response. But the governor just flatly tells him without any smile, no. The town, what he's built, all the people, it's far too risky, especially for something that might just be a pipe dream, to just give up what they've built here for something that might as well be a joke. If the world was so easy to fix based off one man, it would have been fixed already. This is Philip's point of view, especially because of his daughter. But nobody knows that. Rosita, after hearing all this and barely wanting to hear any more, just tells Abraham, let's go. And she just arrogantly scoffs and looks at the governor with menacing cold eyes and says straight to his face, and speaking to Abraham, let's leave this quote-unquote leader to sip wine and dance with all these people while we save the world, because he thinks he's a leader. A real leader would save the world with us. Abraham agrees on this and just lambasts and curses at the governor for showing his true colors to be not a leader at all, and says there will be time when he regrets leading these people the wrong way. And they just get in the truck preparing to leave. But little did Abraham, Rosita, or Eugene expect that the prospect to go save the world was too much for most of the Woodbury people to take. It's too good to pass up. Tyrese, Sasha, Karen, David, Bob, Lizzie, Mika, and Samuel all jump in the truck with them, to the governor and everybody else's surprise. Schumpert came really close to going along, but the governor's whole influence and just his endearment to Woodbury kept him. And Abraham, sensing true victory here, flips off the governor, and they drive away to Washington. Now this puts the governor, Milton, and Martinez, as well as everyone else in Woodbury, at a very, very peculiar spot. They just lost, like, a good portion of their not only people, but the town. Over that? And the governor slams his fist into the nearest table and says that they're all going to their death. Not only is this a pipe dream, it's a lie. A lie from people whose minds have obviously been melded over the course of the apocalypse. And now his own people have fallen for that lie. They had something good here. They have something good here. So, if anyone wants to take that from him or the town, they pay. Like they've made other people and the prisoners pay before. They're going after them, and they're going to make sure that the pipe dream that they're trying to live stays unlived. And he puts Milton specifically in charge, which is also a huge moment, because I've never put Milton in charge of Woodbury ever. And I honestly don't even think that's a what if I have planned for the future. So this is a one and done sort of deal. But don't get too used to it, because it's not going to stay that way. And the governor, Martinez, Allen, Schumpert, and whoever else would go along, go after Abraham and everyone else. Meanwhile, Milton has to get used to the fact that he's in charge of Woodbury now, which is something even he wasn't expecting. But, I mean, he can't really argue with it, given the circumstances. Soon enough, he goes to the main house to either check up on it or maybe get a drink or something like that. We can expect him to go in the house at some sort of point after the governor would have left. Then, right at the edge of the room, he hears knocking. And this catches Milton off guard because very few times had he been in here and he had heard a knock. So, us all knowing what it is, Milton's about to find out with the governor not there. And that might take him a different direction on what to do in Woodbury. Meanwhile, the governor and everyone tracking down Abraham and all of them come across Tara and Megan. And the governor, knowing that it's a decent ways back to Woodbury, especially for the two of them, it's a girl and a little kid. He decides it's best left that they stay with him and this little group here, so that way they don't end up dead like they might have if they didn't find them. And then Tara and Megan share their story and Lily and everything that's gone on. Because this is what I've done with Tara and Megan, considering if the governor hadn't showed up at the right point. So yeah. While they're driving to Washington, they veer off because Abraham knows that they're most likely going to get followed. And him, flipping off the governor, that's most likely going to backfire. So they're much against his better judgment. They're going to have to stay low until they know they're not being tracked before they go to Washington. This is something he really doesn't want to do because Abraham was never, ever against veering off from his destination, especially when he thought that they could save the world. Rosita tells him that she doesn't disagree, and she sees something up ahead. A farm and a car. And Abraham says, I think we just found where we're laying low for now. And this is where we tie in to Abraham and everybody arriving on the farm. But what happens after? How will Shane and Michonne fit in with Negan? And where will the governor end up, especially if he ends up at the farm? That's where we end things for now. What do you guys think will happen next? How did you like this episode? And what is your favorite part so far? With all that out of the way, be sure as always to smash the like button, subscribe to the Omniverse of Nick channel, comment your favorite part or parts of ongoing or past stories, and future requests for what ifs and general discussion that you might see happen in the future. We've got an Abraham comic twist, and the governor and Shane, Michonne, and Negan gearing up for a lot of epicness that's about to turn this story on its hinges. And I'll see you guys next time.